Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Ben, and welcome to a new Godot tutorial series. In this series, we're going to be making a penguin sledding simulator game. Now, this is a simple precision platformer with a high score that is based on essentially speed running, how quickly you can finish each level. You can see we've got a main menu screen here, a little introduction story, and then a few different levels with this level select screen. We have a fasted recorded time that is saved using some saving and loading logic. And we can select a level here. I'm going to select Parker's level. We can see some of the features here. We've got a little penguin that can launch off of platforms. If your penguin runs into a wall and stops moving, they freeze. There's switches that can change the trajectory of cannons in the level that can shoot the penguin around. And we also have these ice blocks, which if you land on them too hard will break. And I don't know if there's another ice block here on this level. Got some different slopes. Oh, there was an ice block. Let's see if we can break one of them here. There we go. There we go, yeah. I landed too hard on it, so it broke through. And I made this game as part of a game jam with my brother, and the theme was freeze, so that's why we have this little freeze meter. And then you can essentially just try and get the fastest time. And cannons are fun. We just added in cannons because cannons are always a fun thing in a platform. So this is what we're going to be making. Let's get started. I have Godot open up right here. It is version 4.3 stable, but any 4.x version should work for this series. Let's create a new project with this, and I'm going to select Browse here so I can choose a new folder. We'll go to Godot 4 tutorial videos, and I'm going to name it Penguin Sledding Simulator Tutorial. There we go. We'll create an edit. Once Godot creates our project for us, we're going to need all of the assets for this. I've provided them in the description of this video. There will be a link to these assets. You can download the zip folder and then export them. And I'm just going to select all of these. Unzip them. Once you've unzipped them, you can select them all and drag and drop them into your Godot project file system window down here, and that should give you all of the resources that are needed for this. So my brother made the music and the audio, I did all the pixel art, and the fonts are all under public domain. So you can find all that information in the GitHub for this as well. Now the next thing we need to do is open up our project settings. Since this is a pixel art game, we need to make a few changes to the way that the assets are displayed on the screen. So we're going to come into display and window, but we need to click this advanced settings right here so we get a few more settings. So the viewport is going to be 320 by 180, and we're going to do a window width override of 1280 by 720. So the view will have this resolution, which is a good resolution for pixel art games, but then we're going to try and scale that up to 1280 by 720 so that it's bigger on our monitor. Then we need to set the mode, which is going to be canvas items. So that will just scale everything up. I don't want to go too much into the detail about how that scales it, but that's just we're choosing how it's going to scale the pixel art up. And that should be good there. The last thing we need to do is type in up here where it says filter settings. You're actually going to type in filter, ironically. And then under textures, we need to switch the default texture filter to nearest. Now this will just make it so that when it is drawing pixel art, it doesn't apply any filters to it. It just leaves it nice and crisp and it won't be blurry. So once you've done that, we've got the project settings set up for our project. Now we're going to create our first level scene and our first scene inside of Godot. So we'll come over here to where it says create a root node. This will allow us to create a new scene. We want to do a new 2D scene, and we'll just call this level. And we'll save it with Control S inside of our file system. Now that gives us a level that we can start to build and design and test our character as we create our character controller. So we want to be able to create levels quickly as we're initially testing. So I'm going to show you how to make an object that will allow us to essentially draw levels and test our character controller really quickly. Now Godot has scenes, and each scene is made up of multiple nodes. So a scene you can imagine as some sort of object in your world, and then each node in that scene is a component that kind of makes up that object. So we want to create, in our level, we want to add a new node, and we can do that with this plus button. Then we can search static body, and this is, we want to do static body 2D since we're making a 2D game. This is a node that can hold a collision and can be interacted with as a collision object, but it's not going to move. That's why it's called static. We're going to add this node to the scene, but we also need to add a shape that defines the collision shape for this object that we're going to be colliding with. So I'm going to add a new node again, and we're going to do collision polygon 2D. Now when we select this collision polygon 2D node, it's going to give us a few more options here in the top right. And you can see we're able to add, create points, edit points, and delete points on this collision polygon. Now I'm going to click this to turn on snap, just to make things a little easier for me. And then I'm going to make sure I'm on add here. And I'm going to draw some points here inside of the world. And you can see that I'm able to quickly design a level like this and define a collision shape for this. Now we can save, and we can run this scene, and it wants us to select a main scene. We'll just select the current one. And there we go. Our game is running, but we can't actually see anything. So these collision shapes aren't actually visible in the game. And that's pretty good, except in this case, we do want to be able to see these ones. Now there's a couple ways we can do this. In our project settings, we can go into debug, and we can do visible collision shapes. And if we turn that on, then we can see our collision shape in the world. Now, the other thing we can do is we can actually make our collision polygon display itself with some code. And we might actually do that later. Not sure, but for now we're just going to use visible collision shapes because that's going to be easier as we're getting into this project. Now that we've set up the basics for our level, we're going to start setting up our player character. Now we're going to create a new scene for our player, and to do this we can come up and use this plus button to create a new scene. So over here we can create a new node, right here we can create a new scene. We'll click on that. We will do another scene because we want to do a very specific type of scene. So you could do a 2D scene, but because our player is going to have it's going to need to collide with some other objects in the world, we actually want to use a different node. So we can click other node right here, and then we can search character body 2D. So this is a common node that is used when you want to create a platform. It's very useful for platform games, but it can be used in other types of games as well, even an action RPG. But this character body 2D node will allow us to have fine control over the character's movement while still allowing the engine to handle collisions with walls and other solid objects in the world. So it gives us a lot of control, but also we don't have to micromanage every collision. So let's double click on that, and we will name our scene player, and we'll save it right here. Now this node right here should be at position 0, 0 in your scene. And over here on the right, when our node is selected, we have some different properties here. Now the transform should be at 0, 0, rotation should be at 0, and scale should be at 1, 1. So watch those. Our motion mode is currently set to grounded. This is what we want. This is for platform games. If you were to set it to floating, that would be for something, maybe a motion. It could be a side view, but you would have a character that's floating in the air. But it's also for stuff like action RPGs. Anything with like a top view perspective, you would also use floating. Okay? But we'll leave it as grounded for now. Now, we can't see our player at all, so we need to add a new node to our player scene that will allow us to see the player. So let's add a new node, and we're going to use a sprite 2D. And once we have this, we can come into our textures. We can find our penguin.png, and we can drag it over and drop it into here, just like this. And you can see our penguin has actually 2 images here for our animation of the penguin. So if we come into animation, the animation property, while the sprite node 2D is selected, we can set the horizontal frames equal to 2. And now we can see our penguin is only displaying a single frame. And if we were to cycle through this frame property, we could see the different frames on this animation. So let's have the standing penguin right here. And we're actually going to make some changes to how the penguin is displayed, because we want to adjust where the origin of the penguin is. So we're going to come into the offset, and we're going to set the Y to -8. Now I have this origin in a very specific position right here because we're going to be animating the penguin rocking back and forth at some time. And this origin on the penguin right here affects what it looks like as it's rotating. It rotates around this point. But we also want to actually drag and move up our penguin, or you can click on it and then just use the arrow keys to move it up a little bit so that it's standing right on the ground here. You can, if you imagine this line right here of the origin, the x-axis of the origin right here is the ground. We want our penguin to be standing on the ground. And I just like to do that for platform games. You technically don't have to, but I find it's useful. So we'll save our little penguin. We'll come back into our level right here. And we can now add our penguin scene to this scene. So I've shown you that you can create a scene and add nodes to it. Now we're going to add another scene to a scene. So scenes can have scenes inside of themselves. So we're going to use this little link icon right here and select our player, and that adds our player penguin to this scene. Now we can drag it down, and we can, for now, we'll just set it up on this little platform right here. We'll save and we'll run the game. And there we go. We've got the basics for our project set up, and that's going to be it for this video. In the next video, we'll start working on our player character and the movement for the player character so that we can start experimenting with how it feels to move that character around in these levels. So if you find this series useful, if you find this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to check out more of my Godot content, I have more videos here on the YouTube channel that are free, and I also have a paid bundle which includes a Metroidvania 1-bit Godot course, my popular 1-bit Godot course, a new action RPG course that I made, and a pixel art course, and then my book that I recently made. So if you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.